Welcome. For those of you that are just arriving and sort of sneaking into your seats and that, I would encourage you, in fact, this is meant to be a very relaxed, informal session. I would encourage you to go up and poke around in the images that you see up on the table here. The intent behind that is that if there's an image that sort of inspires you to learn more about, or you think something's going on in there that you'd like to share, it will help me to shape the stories I do tell. Having been working in this capacity for the last 6 years, trying to squeeze 6 years into 45 minutes is a bit daunting. And rather than me ramble on and keep you here too long, I thought this will help shape some of the stories that I can share. So if you have an image already, thank you. If you haven't, please feel free to just sort of poke around. And I'll do a little bit of my monologue that I sort of wanted to share. And I also, so you can keep looking while I kind of yak away here, and then we can come back to that. Thank you, Gwen, for the opportunity to be here today to speak a little bit about my experiences. For those of you that are having a chance to look at the pictures on the table, there's a phrase that you're very familiar with that says, if a picture paints 1,000 words. And I often find that if I can use the imagery of those are images that I've collected over the last 6 years working in community, both with my own photography as well as with the youth that I work with or community members that have shared those images. I sort of went to do a little bit of a query on my laptop this morning actually to figure out how many images I have. These represent right from day one right up to well, in the last month. And if we go with the idea that, welcome, that there's a picture's paints 1,000 words, and I discovered this morning I have over 9,200 images on my laptop of just my work in community. That means that I have about 9,200,000 words, and I probably should stop talking now and let the pictures do the talking. So Mary, one of the things that we welcome, and thank you for coming, one of the things I've asked everyone to do as they come in is to have a look at the pictures up there and to select one that you'd like to learn more about. And this will help me to share stories that doesn't kind of ramble off in all directions for too long this morning. Thank you. So on that note then, I do want to take a few minutes to share, to express my appreciation to a number of people. I started at Rural Roads in 2001. So this is my 11th year, in fact, April of 2001. So I'm going into my 11th anniversary here. And it began a legacy of the phrase that got bandied about at Rural Roads around what to do with Wendy. And every time, and the reason for that is that I have moved from computer services to School of Business, to CTET, Center for Teaching and Educational Technologies, to the Research Office, and now into COM, which is the Center for Applied Leadership and Management under the Indigenous Development banner. So I've moved around. I haven't sat still and behaved myself very well. I keep bouncing from one area to another, but I am very grateful for that opportunity. Over the last 6 years, sorry if I'm yelling, but over the last 6 years, I've been provided with the most amazing learning opportunity in working in Indigenous development, or in community in particular. The success, the challenges, the awakenings, the awareness, both good and sobering, and learning about respect, humility, and sincere admiration and inspiration for those that I've worked with, or had the opportunity to work with. I am sincerely grateful for the patience and willingness of the many youth, adults, and elders who have mentored me through and continue to do so this experience, which you'll see in these images flashing up on the screen. I'm also grateful for the many supervisors, and there's a few well, there were a few in the office, in the room here a few minutes ago, and there's still the supervisors, the managers, administrators, and those in the finance office, the IT, and HR, and media tech, who have been supported, have always supported me doing things differently, as over and over again was necessary in the work I do. So never did I follow into what was norm, and often had to reinvent the wheel. I am grateful for Railroad's willingness to let me play outside of the box in pursuing this learning. And I am very grateful for the many external supports, people, ministries, and good friends who have supported me through this project and through Railroads through this project. And finally, I am grateful to be here today on the traditional lands of the Coast Salish people and to be able to share some of these experiences with you. So thank you for that. Now back to the pictures that you've collected. I'm wondering if, what inspired you to pick those up? Now I know I had to push you back there to do it, so inspiration was being told to do it. But there's such an intriguing story behind each and every one of those pictures. And I'm wondering if there was anyone here that would like to sort of show their image and maybe share a little bit about why they thought that image was inspirational to them, or why they chose that picture. Thank you, Mary.
I picked this image because I thought that the person standing beside me was here in the room, and I don't know who she is, so I was curious. And then I know this person with the ministry, and I don't know this person, so I'd just love to know what brought these three people together.
Good. Well, thank you for that, Mary. And you're right. We do have Dawn Lindsay Burns here. She is with Ministry of Aboriginal Relations and Reconciliation. She's been hugely instrumental in the work that we've been doing with the youth, Aboriginal youth, and particularly on the island. It's Dawn's birthday here today as well, so we wish you a happy birthday. And she is working in that picture. She was here on campus with a group of youth from Pakwachin.
Oh, okay.
And we had the opportunity, through an invitation with MAR, to bring, I think it was 13.
Yeah, about that, yeah.
13 youth from Pakwachin Nation, who she'd been working with, I think, all summer, and had identified that they had an interest in learning more about what had been happening in our Yukuche, working up in Yukuche in the Learning Center and using the technologies to engage youth in learning. So she and Pamela Miller, who's also in the picture from Ministry of Aboriginal Relations, also joined together and came out and put on a 3-day workshop here at Railroads in the Muse. We had absolutely no money, no budget whatsoever, but what happened was quite magical. We went out to our, first of all, I think you were able to provide us with some funds for the meals. We went out to Mediatek. They came out with their cameras and all their equipment here. So you had Dan and Dave, Dan Anton, at that time it was Chelsea Lowe. And they came and spent 3 days with us. And we had a gentleman from Tom Lee Music, whose name's Keith Gallant, who's become instrumental in working with us, who brought all the recording equipment for audio recordings. And they were working on 3 days in producing video, photo, imagery, and audio recordings and music to demonstrate to the youth how to use the technology and to inspire them to continue some of the things that they had identified in their summer-long process of what was important to them. They took that, they worked on developing movies, stories, songs, which you'll see. We'll play the video a little bit later. You'll hear about it and see it up there. And they took that back to their chief and council to make a pitch to have something like that brought home to their community. So that was what was happening in that picture. We had Alan, and at that time it was Tom, come out. They got involved with the recording. They presented them with certificates at the end. It was just a huge, wonderful event. And so,
this was my picture just to kind of tag along. So this is a group.
Do you want to stand up and share?
Yeah, sure. So this is the Pakwachin group who attended the 3-day workshop. And I just thought I would show this picture now because, yes, I was working really closely with that community and really intensely over the summer, which is when we hosted the workshop. But the pitch that you're speaking of was really important to the youth to send to their community because I think they really felt like the message of the youth gathering together and being this cohesive unit who work together and be active community members, and you know, a group that they felt like the community really needed to step up and invest in. This is the kind of message, and this is the togetherness that they wanted to kind of showcase. Yes. So during the 3-day workshop, they were gathering images like this and different ones of them, you know, in circles, and just trying to, you know, symbolize that, right. Those connections and the importance of being together and working towards leadership in their community and stuff like that. But yeah, this was really important to me because this was our first real time working together, putting together something like this, and we've done more since. So yeah, something special to me.
Very good. Yeah. Thank you. That's perfect. I don't even have to add to that. So that's. And I'll step back and sort of fill in some of the blanks after we hear a little bit more about the images that you chose. So is there anyone else who'd like to show their? Out there. Welcome. Anyone else that would like to sort of?
Sure, Wendy. I cheated. I took 2.
That's good. That's perfect.
My images are of an elder with a rose in her hand, sitting beside a young man, probably in his 20s, with his hat turned backwards, and there's a little kid hanging around his neck. And the other image is 2 young guys pushing a quad out of the snow, and a young boy beside them, sitting in front of the quad, and a dog behind him. You know, I guess I picked them because, especially recently, it's come to my attention that intergenerational understanding is something that we need to pursue. And there's a lot of interest in pursuing it, both in First Nations and non-First Nations communities. And I don't think we've done a very good job of understanding intergenerational connectivity or disconnectivity in social research. So, Wendy, I don't know if
that's beautiful. That's beautiful pictures that you've selected. These are both from Yukutche First Nation, where I have been working over the last 6 years and continue to work with them in an ever-evolving role with the community. This was one of the very earliest pictures. This is Margaret Joseph. She's one of the elders in the community. And this was at their very first awards presentation event that they had in the school. They had a group of youth had just completed a life skills program, and this was graduation. And Pamela, you were at this, so Pamela Miller from Ministry, she's at Ministry of Aboriginal Relations, she's here. This was part of that image, and the youth had actually presented her with this rose. So if Margaret had got up and spoken to the youth about how important it was for them to be in school, to continue their schooling, and to embrace the opportunities that came to the community. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Yukutche, Yukutche is a 17-hour drive from Victoria. It's about 300 kilometers northwest of Prince George, and the community is about, I think the membership is about 200, and community people living on reserve vary between 120 to maybe 90 at any given time. The community is located 80 kilometers down at the end of an active logging road, and there really is, well, at the time that this picture was taken, the only thing out there was a band office, a school, and the community, the housing for the community. The work that I began during this time was offered in a small unused home of about less than 800 square feet. And so I was just beginning at this point and just learning my place and what I could bring to the community. So this is Margaret, and thank you. You're right, there is a young man there with a even younger one with his arms wrapped around his neck. That's Cyrus. And this was an everyday occurrence. You know, certainly from, I think probably from September through till I think they still have a good whack of snow up there even now. And this was about, you know, here they are they love their quads, they love their snowmobiles, and this is like going to work, trying to get to work or to school or to something, but most likely they were just having a good time. One of the things that I discovered very quickly about working up in Yukutche was part of the role was to bring employment. My original role was to bring training to the community under the auspices of employment readiness skills. The story behind that was, there's no employment, what kind of skills are you possibly going to offer us that's meaningful? So when I had to step back and change my approach. That's when the true learning and the true relationship really began in the community, and how they helped shape the learning and how they helped shape where they wanted to go with the learning. But one of the things that I became very familiar with very quickly was that with children, with youth, with adults, and with elders, the learning is about the whole. It was never an adult learning session. There was never a youth learning session. If you said, this is for adult learning and only the parents can be here today, nobody came. So you may be sitting in front of a group of people sharing something and you have 2 kids on your lap. But that was part of what needed to happen in order for the community to be comfortable to be there. Okay. So intergenerational learning, very much. And you needed to become comfortable with the fact that the children were as much a part of what had to happen in the learning as it was the elders. So thank you. It was very good. Anyone else have a picture you'd like to share?
I can share mine. I've got a photo of 2 young guys. They're butchering an animal. I can't tell what it is, maybe a deer. And they're with an older man who's shown up in some of these pictures here. The boys look pretty tentative. They look uncertain about what they're doing, and they're working on a brand new table. So it looks to me like it was created as an opportunity for training or exposure. So I was wondering about that, about the need and about the effect, what happened.
Thank you very much. There's an intriguing picture again happening in Yakuche. And this would be moose, a moose kill. And the people in here, they would be out at moose camp. And you're right, it's a very intense and very directed learning that's happening right now. And the elder would be overseeing the whole event of what was happening with the moose. At the end of when a moose is shot, there's almost nothing that goes to waste. These are moose people. This is their winter. They're moose and fish people. So they're at the end of the salmon run. So their other main source of food would be salmon, but moose is their primary food, especially through the hunting season. This is what they'll be looking for. Now, Greg Cran can share a story about one of the events that this happened. One of the exercises in the Learning Center was around introducing digital and video equipment. I had raised some funds, or through the different funding in ministries, we had raised funds to purchase a number of cameras, and in particular, a beautiful Canon GL2 video camera. It was a fairly large investment, and one that I was very nervous about because I personally hadn't, I think Greg got a picture there, I hadn't learned how to use it. It was just fresh in my hands, fresh out of the box, or fresh still in the box. And I headed up to Yakuche with this camera. Now, I had been working with a young man, Mitchell Joseph, who was familiar with working with cameras, and I had told him about this. When I drove into the community, he met me at the truck and said, "I'm going to fish camp. Can I have the camera?" And I'm going, I think it was like a $2,500 camera, and I hadn't even learned how to use it myself yet. And so this young man who has incredible inspiration and confidence, especially around use of technology, I said, okay. So I kind of winced and handed him the camera, and he disappeared for 4 days. And I started to get a little bit nervous when the one thing that Dan Anton had said to me before I took the camera is, don't get it wet. Well, as Mitchell's heading down the highway down the road, the logging road, off to fish camp with this camera, the worst rain and thunder and lightning storm I've ever experienced in my life happened. And so all I could figure was, all right, what's good, you know. So 3 days later, I get a phone call from his grandma saying, Mitchell wanted me to phone and tell you, the camera's okay and so is he. They still hadn't come back from fish camp, but all I needed, she felt that I would be so worried about this piece of equipment that she needed to phone and tell me this. Now, the reason why I'm telling you about this event with the camera was that Mitchell came back from fish camp and he had filmed the entire fishing 4 days where they had the largest haul of salmon at the end of the salmon run coming in their nets, and he just couldn't get out of fish camp because they had so much fish to process, which would be cutting them, drying them, and getting them ready for winter. And he'd filmed this whole event of this fishing process. And in the meantime of that, they had actually had killed a moose. And so he filmed the gutting of the moose as well. And he brought this back to the Learning Center in Yakuche, and we put it up on the big screen. And the young people, like to me it looked extremely, it was one of these edited out documentaries. This was like the real thing happening right in front of you on the big screen in the Learning Center. And the young people were doing an analysis of those who were actually doing the skinning of the moose. And so they were critiquing everything from the bone structure to the way the hide was being removed. And while I was on the phone, talking to Greg at that time, and I said, you would believe what's going on here, this huge analysis around the way they're carving up this moose. And of course, coming from Victoria, I hadn't seen that before. And Greg said, can you put it on Skype? So we were able to churn the Skype camera around, focus it on what was happening in the lab, which was watching this big screen image of the skinning of the moose all the way down into Victoria. And so the conversation that was happening, and it was all these young people who were just, doing an analysis of what was actually happening. So a critical piece in their culture, everyone, even the 3-year-old, had a place in what happens when they shoot a moose and what takes place in the carving of the moose. The 3-year-old has a responsibility to make sure all the knives are washed and ready. And I said to somebody, so 3-year-old with a knife, and they said, yes, they might get cut, but it would only be once. They learn from it. So they all had a role, and they all had a place. And just one other little story about the moose. It was, and Greg's nodding here. He's my cue, my production manager over here. One little story about the moose is when I've been up in the community working, and they're going to yell at me because I just covered the mic, in the summertime, there was, especially during forest season, it's a beetle-infested location, so the forest is drying up and dying all around them. In the summertime, there would be, you'd listen for the sounds of airplanes, water bombers. So, and I said, there's only one thing more frightening than hearing a water bomber up there in the summertime, is that when you hear one gunshot. If you're working in the Learning Center, I said, they were told, if you hear one gunshot, that's cool. That means that there's a moose has come into the community and somebody's taken it down. If you hear 2 gunshots, hit the floor. Because he said, that moose is running and they're just firing because they're going to make sure they get it. So the warning to me was if you hear 1 shot, it's good. We're good. The moose is done and dinner is served. But 2 or 3, get low. So anyhow, the moose is a critical part of their lifestyle up there. And unfortunately, because of the changing forest habitat, the moose population is changing. So now bear is becoming very predominant up there. So there is a shift that's taking place too. How's my time here for stories? Because I'm half past, okay. So maybe I have time for one more story and then I'll give you a bit more background behind all this. Anyone, one more image they'd like to share? I had enough stories and I'll move on.
Picture of 2 beautiful children, okay. But I'm not exactly sure why I have a child similar age, so it's one of the stories.
Very cool. And Erin, you also have a picture too.
Yeah, I have one
of the young man. Okay. Well, thank you. I can actually speak to both of these. There's the 2 young children in their regalia outfits. They're from Yakuche as well. This young man is also from Yakuche. He's one of our up-and-coming, I would say probably technical assistants and photographers. This is the camera again that was being used in the community for capturing their stories and capturing their family practices and that. And to inspire the young people to get involved with using technology they would normally have their hands on. And so this young man is actually This is the same camera. And through the use of their opportunity to work with this, they identified that there was a core group of individuals that were interested in going off to the Gulf Island Film School one summer. So they spent, 3 of them went to the Gulf Island Film School, spent, I guess, a week there, and then produced some really incredible footage from that week, and were offered bursaries to go back. So this is something, they haven't gone back, but they had that opportunity to return. So hopefully that they will take up that chance another time. These young people, these are the Yekooche drummers and dancers. You'll see them on the screen here in a few minutes. I'm going to show the video. These are 2 of, I think, of a core group of maybe 15 or 20 of young people now. They actually have, when I first started working in Yekooche, they didn't have a dancing group. They didn't have a drum group. They weren't even sure what their traditional regalia would be. They weren't sure what their traditional music should be. Their language it's going through a resurgence right now because they have a cultural teacher in the community. But when I first started working there, the young people didn't have this type of opportunity. Through different activities that have happened in the community, including some of the work that happened in the Learning Center around what we call project-based learning, a group of parents and mothers identified that one of the things they wanted to do was to get a drum and dance group going in the community. So they were able to work through the Learning Center and through funding we were able to put into the Learning Center to write a proposal to get a dance group started, which included budgeting for what they would have to do to purchase materials and bits for their regalia, as well as to even host their practices where they could provide apples and juice and things like that. So they were able to establish the Yekooche dance group. They're from, I think they started around 3 years old, and they go up till they finish school. There's about 15 or 20 of them, and they've got progressively more professional, more tuned into their culture and tuned into their traditional dance, traditional songs. They've got the cultural teacher now working with the elders to help bring the real songs and the real language to their music. And last year, this little group, this is just 2 of about 15 or 20, they traveled down to the Kamloops powwow. They performed in Prince George, they performed in Fort St. James. They do first place on a number of the forums that they were on. And now they're traveling all through northern BC in performing their traditional dance and drumming. And you'll see that up here in a few minutes. I'm actually really hoping I can bring them to Royal Roads one day, because they have such a dynamic spirit about them, and they're really learning as they go as well about who they are. So thank you for sharing that image as well. So on that note, because you've heard a few stories, a real quick recap of 6 years. I started working with Yekooche the Yekooche people, and it progressed over the 3 or 4 years where I was going into the community 2 weeks at a time and out 2 weeks at a time. And there's a few of you here that remember that routine that I was doing. As my role in the Learning Center evolved to, as the community members stepped forward to take on the roles in the Learning Center, my role was to step back. And the more I stepped back, the more the community members invested into the work that had to happen in the Learning Center to keep it going. 6 years later, I am no longer expected to be in the community every 2 weeks. I try to go up there at least 2 or 3 times a year, but we do teleconferences on a weekly basis, touching base on what it is that they're trying to do, how they're shaping and evolving the Learning Center to meet the needs of the community. It's fully managed and operated now by 3 youth, and they have a continuing studies adult teacher in there as well. Part of what happened in the Learning Center was when Dawn and Pamela actually invited Royal Roads and myself to give a sort of a core slice of the things that can happen in the Learning Center by doing the creative technology workshop that we offered with Pakwachin. And from that opportunity, we were invited to go up to Ihadasat, which is north Zabelis. And again, you'll see in a minute here with the video what some of that activity was around, using the creative technology to engage the youth. The digital story piece came from SAYOUT, hearing about what we do with creative technology, but how can we move it to the next level where we're learning about our stories, learning how to capture our stories for ourselves, learning how to use language, and build our own capacity to archive our culture and our history. So on that, I'm just going to run the video, and it's got sound to it, and I'll let it run for a few minutes, and then when the sound sort of phases out, I'll just go into the piece that sort of brings some of this home in the sense of what is research about. Very good. My assistant's over here. This is out at fish camp, moose camp here, taking out the equipment to the... The music in the background is this core group of the Yukuche drummers and dancers. This was before they had their regalia, so in that image where you saw they're in their feathers and their capes, this was all before that. This is the young man you just saw with the camera up front and center. I don't know if anybody recognizes this young man, Mitchell Joseph. He started out in the Learning Center as my technical assistant, learned what he could from me before he told me, go home, leave the key. And he's continued to be manager of the Learning Center. This next one is when the Pakwachin youth came to Royal Roads. You'll recognize some of the furniture being the Muse. You may recognize a few other faces as well. And the music is their creation.
Never forget.
All of this was done in maybe 2-3 days. And their faces you'll recognize, like Dan, who was huge supportive and instrumental to success.
Give you hug when you want to cry. Give you high five when you pick up a lucky dime. Everybody knows, everybody, Pakwachin Hall is where you want to study. To help the place I felt safe every day when it rains. Can't believe I missed a beautiful place. Not very big, you'll remember everybody's faces. The food's got you tasteless.
This was the first for most of those youth to have used this equipment or had this opportunity to work at Royal Roads.
Bars, Williams, Harris to the Henrys, existence will go on for centuries. Come here for a little vacay, cause the name is Pakwachin Nation. Take a right on McTavish and take a left and go straight. Stand in line and grab a plate. Grab a spoonful of everything that we taught you. You know what to do. Come again with your friends till the end. Never forget what they said. Always remember this day.
Fuzzy picture. This again, just briefly back to Yukuche, some of the use of the youth using, these are the two of those that went off to Gulf Island Film School. This was Ihadasat, our visit to Ihadasat. The good thing to know about Ihadasat is that working with Dawn, they have now, a year later after the workshop, they were actually able to get the funds together, working with Chief and Council to get now they have a youth center that allows them to have all this equipment in their community. So it took a year.
Take care of yourself day by day. Will go by faster.
They're also looking into now offering their first youth forum as well, sometime between now and the summer. Right.
Program that goes through the school districts. So 3 of them who are part of this Eric Michael Productions are traveling to Winnipeg in May to be celebrated for their receive their awards.
Very cool. Yeah. This was working with Sayout First Nation.
Soon the wolf can no longer see his masters at all in the stormy sea, not even their canoe. He begins to howl constantly, trying to call them back, but he knows they are gone.
It's just a clip from one of the digital story pieces that we worked together with youth, adults, and elders to develop a series of their own traditional stories. Now, all of these have been in English, but the goal is to start to continue these projects is how to start moving their language into the stories as well. We worked out at Sayout for, I think it was about a 6-month project, and they came to Royal Roads here a few times. The gentleman you see working here is Keith Gallant from Tom Lee Music, who again has been just incredibly supportive of the work in all of the communities. He came out and helped them with the audio recording equipment, teaching them how to use it. So they're now looking at putting, the Cultural Society of Sayout is actually looking at creating a media lab in their community as well. And we've got a proposal into Vancouver Foundation as a sub-proponent for that to help support that. And so that's what you're seeing here. I'm not sure if there's any more songs here, but there'll be more images. So I can sort of carry on with those while those images run out. Here we brought them to Royal Roads University to show off the LIC. And they were so excited about being here. And you'll see pictures of them sitting up in the interview rooms and the LIC. They actually came last July and presented their stories as well to the Royal Roads campus of the stories that they created. Now, I'm just recently started working in Songhees. We're still in a program development stage there as to what we'll be offering, but what has come out of that is their keen interest in the invitation was for us to take the opportunities, these technology and use of technology into the community to help engage community members in speaking to their comprehensive community planning that they're trying to organize in their community right now. So we're looking at doing a number of things in community. And one of their representatives, Verna Baker, spoke to her yesterday, and one of the things she asked is there an opportunity to bring those individuals to Royal Roads at any time? And I said, absolutely. Look forward to any opportunity to bring community to help them learn a little bit more about what we do here. And not just in the buildings, but what do we do in the schools and what do we do in the centers that we could actually showcase some of the things that inspire engagement. So in speaking with Ministry of Advanced Ed not too long ago, they said it was very much about, it has been about bringing learning to the community. And that's what a lot of the work I've been doing over the last 6 years is how do we take the learning to community, but they're also now hearing how important it is that community is being brought to the learning so that we break down some of those barriers that intimidate people to come to continue on in their learning and their education to support going on into post-secondary. So how do we bridge those? How do we break down those challenges? So some of the images that continue to inspire you here. There have been a number of, the work has been, that I've been involved in has been of wide interest, not just in our local communities in BC, but also internationally. There's the story about the Okuche Learning Center and the impact it's had on the community and on the youth in the community has been published in a couple of documents from this one is from the Commonwealth of Learning and from a conference at Kochi, India. And this one just recently came out, and it's published in here as well. It was from Australia, where it's just talking back and talking forward. And it's all about a number of Indigenous projects from across around the world. And so the Yukuche Learning Center, the impact it's had on youth and in youth engagement in learning has been documented in a number of publications. I think based on the time we have left, this piece here that's showing right now, we brought, it leads me to one more piece that isn't actually well showcased up here. Is called post-secondary immersion. And I think I may have spoken briefly with you about it a year or so ago, Tim, as well as others here on campus. Post-secondary immersion is about how do we help individuals, especially youth that are not necessarily in the school system but have left. Youth can be, by the way, from 15 to 35, have left the school system, but we want to inspire them to get them back into the system, which is part of what this having fun with the technology is all about. Is every time they identify something that they are excited about doing, they have things that they must do in order to achieve that. And it's those, and identifying those next step strategies that helps to drive the learning and their inspiration for learning that gets them willing to go back into a learning environment. Learning environment doesn't have to be a classroom. One of the things that happened with working with Yukuche is after working a number of years in the community, there was an interest to bring them, they wanted to come and see what Rural Roads was all about. So we, over a period of about 6-8 months, we brought a group of them down who were taking continuing study courses that were learning about taking courses in a post-secondary environment. They were staying in the dorms, they were eating in the cafeteria, and they, for some of them, they'd never been out of the community before, let alone on an airplane. So this was a huge capacity building piece for them. They would come here and they would stay for a week, maybe 2 weeks in a supported learning environment, and then they would take that experience back to the community. The first 2 trips were pretty horrific for them, really stressful. They got here, they're in a very foreign environment, lots of people around that not many Aboriginal students to speak of that they would see firsthand. And so the first 2 weeks, there was a lot of, the first 2 times where there was a lot of intense interaction with them. By the 3rd time they came here, it was like off the plane, arriving on campus, and in fact, one of them, I think he kept making a point of heading right to Alan's office and say, "Hi, I'm back." And they would roar around campus, and this became their second home. I noticed in Facebook, they were posting to all their other friends in Facebook, including the younger ones, saying, "This is really cool. I'm at Rural Roads. Stay in school. You should be here." And I'm going, holy cow. That was a spin-off that was so unexpected, and at the same time it was so strong a message from their own people and their own peers that there was a very powerful message going out. So they are now encouraging and supporting all the younger ones to stay in school, and we actually and to continue. We actually had a group coming from Gathering Our Voices decide to visit at Rural Roads last week. So the Gathering Our Voices is a big youth conference up island, and 3 of the Yukuche regulars that come to Rural Roads were actually shepherding 6 of their youth around, and they stopped in on the way back to Yukuche to show the younger ones what Rural Roads was all about, and that was last week. So all this in the short time that I have left here, and I'm supposed to get the signal when I've run out of time for questions, but I just wanted to, we're good about 10, okay. This, in all of the images that you saw here, there's a lot of fun. It's a very young group of people. A lot of work goes into that, a lot of challenges that those individuals deal with on a day-to-day basis. Creating the environment that helps them to become self-driven in what they're doing and what they wish to do and what they're powerfully passionate about doing is the key piece to the success of what I call sustainable engagement. I don't know if many of you have seen this brochure that's now in circulation around the BC education system. Now this is K-12, but one of the things that's coming up very loud and clear is that K-12 and post-secondary need to become seamless. And in here, the very things that I'm going to share up here are what the BC education plan is driving home as what we need to be thinking and how we need to be redirecting our whole educational planning for BC. So all of those activities that we've been seeing up here are wonderful one-offs, but you need to create an environment that allows for those opportunities to be sustainable, long-lasting, and driving where someone wants to go. One of the first things you need to be thinking about is creating the learning environment. Now, if you're talking about young people, you're talking about school classrooms, you're talking about the university and the programs that we're offering either online or face-to-face. The learning environment needs to be welcoming. It needs to be safe. It needs to be neutral and accessible. This came from the work, my understanding of working in the Learning Center. Welcoming is easy. We all do that, or we think we do that. We create a space that everybody is welcome to, but that's an important piece. People need to feel that they want to come back. Accessible. Well, from the work that I've been doing, if you put that space, that welcoming space behind 3 or 4 locked doors that require special permission and passes to get to, they're not going to come. If you put it into an environment that is foreign or uncomfortable for the individuals, they will not come. So it's not accessible mentally as well as physically. Safe isn't just about you making sure the outside isn't going to harm them physically. They have to feel safe to be there, to be able to share and exchange what it is that they want to learn or from you or what they want to share of themselves. I didn't understand that that was such a critical piece until I had more than a few people say to me, thank you for creating a safe space that I can share these stories and not be uncomfortable with that. Especially when, even if they're with their own community members, sometimes that's the most awkward space for them to share a story, but you have to be aware that you create a safe and a neutral space, that everybody has the right to be there and no one feels intimidated that they're in the wrong place. The next part was around establishing the ground rules. Respect, responsibility, relevance, and reciprocal. The work that working in the Learning Center, this was critical. This may not seem like a big jump for us, but if we don't understand how these are used in community or how we're working with individuals from community, respect is easy. We think we all understand what that part is about respect, but it isn't about demanding it. It's about showing it, demonstrating it, and having it come back to you. About the time that it takes to develop that relationship, to order that respect has become something that's a given between you. Responsibility is everybody has a responsibility, including the learner. They have a responsibility to say that they want to do this, this is important to them, and they are going to give as well as you're going to be there to support and give back to them. Whatever they give, you need to match or give more. Relevance. When I tried to take employment readiness skills into a community that's 80 kilometers down the end of a logging road and there is no employment, why would they want to sit with me for hours on end learning about Microsoft Office? Okay? So as long as I was pushing employment readiness skills, I couldn't fill 3 seats, let alone a class. I tried if you're interested in reading the story, I have a case study here, and it's also online under Indigenous Development. But I tried every permutation possible to try to draw in individuals for an employment readiness. When that didn't work, after 2 months, I started questioning my own ability to be there and my usefulness, and not to mention the cost of money it took to put me there and the expense. So I went to Chief and Council and I said, I'm not doing something right because I can't get anyone to be there. And they told me to be patient, keep doing what I'm doing, create that welcoming space, safe, neutral space, and they will come. And I went back and I let go of what I thought I had to do and started to just watch, listen, and learn from what the individuals were doing in the Learning Center, what they wanted to do with the technology. And that's when the real learning began. What they wanted to learn was what I was there to help them with, not what I thought I was supposed to be doing. And the reciprocal piece means, and this is something that's really important because we don't know that we don't do this sometimes. Reciprocal means you're not the teacher. Sometimes you're the student. And that the student is sometimes the teacher. And so engaging in this exchange of what we were there to do, becoming partners in that process, is what helped the learning to take place with all these young people you saw up there. What do you want to do with that music? Why do you come in and sit here for 8 hours a day listening to rap? Where is this going? What's important to you? What are the things that you want to do with that media lab that you have up in the community now? And how do you help build the learning pieces from that? So the ground rules of engagement isn't just for one person or another, it's for the interaction between the learning and the learner. And sometimes you trade places. In order for me to help somebody learn how to do what they want to do, they had to teach me about what it is that they wanted to do. What is it? And for an example, around a rapper who wanted to do a rap battle. And holy cow, if you don't think I was in trouble with, I didn't even know what a rap battle was. However, that young man not only went on to complete a number of CDs and write his own music, and write his own songs, he decided that learning to read and write was critical because he couldn't express himself without doing that. He didn't have those skills prior to him acknowledging it was time for him to do that. Engagement. Well, this is what happens when we have someone who shows up. They've decided that this place is a good place to be. They begin to understand about the ground rules that are involved in being there. And they have a curiosity about something they want to do. And the environment is there for them to explore that curiosity. So you want to be a rapper, do rap battles. What's that all about? Explore the environment and the opportunities that create that for them. And then they need to be able to apply it. Okay? So working in the Learning Center, it was for those who showed a curiosity about something, how did I help support them in discovering what it was they were curious about, how could they explore those possibilities, and then tried to run fast enough to stay in front of them while they tried to apply it, and while we learned together. This is where the reciprocal really became important. The mentorship was two ways. Sometimes it was me. Often I would outlive my usefulness very quickly, and I'd have to bring in people like the Dan Antons of the world, or Keith Gallant, or others in their community. Once they start to see successes of the individuals, others start coming out and say, I know that, or I want to learn that. And how do we help them exchange between, because every time that they were able to support each other, they would build on their own confidence and their own skills. And then the ability to demonstrate. Going from a place of coming in through curiosity, exploration, application, and mentorship, once they were able to demonstrate not only to themselves, but to others in the community that they had a skill, or they had a talent, or they had a passion about something, their confidence grew. And they were willing to share that with others. So before that, they didn't want to share. They were very much about what's in this for me. It was all about what's in this for me. Moving through this, they started to come to a place where they were not only interested in mentoring others, but willing to demonstrate to others what it is they could do. This brought on, the more they demonstrated what they were good at, what they loved to be doing, what they were willing to put themselves out there to do, the more they were acknowledged for that. Acknowledgement serves to build the confidence. It helps them to define who they are, their place, that they have something to give, something to contribute in ways, not that that didn't exist before, because I'm very sure it was in their own cultural ways, but what had happened is that everything that those young people stepped outside to do into our world, they saw themselves as failures at. But when they started to have the opportunity to explore what possibilities exist for themselves and demonstrate that they were very successful at it, I couldn't keep up fast enough. Every evening I'd go back to my trailer and I tried to figure out what tomorrow will bring, so to make sure I had next steps for the individuals who would come in to want to learn about everything from writing a letter, because yes, they did want to eventually learn how to use Microsoft Office, writing a letter, doing a newsletter, photography, going to film school, learning how to write music. It just I couldn't move fast enough, and had to look into drawing on not only their own resources, but others from outside. So the sustainable engagement piece comes once you start to have a core group of individuals who have gone through this circle and have begun to see themselves as leading themselves. They have now taken responsibility for what it is they want to do. They've demonstrated to themselves they're very capable of doing that if they're motivated and passionate about it and keep head down and work at it. They're now interested in helping others to do similar. They're very excited about that, and it's not an immediate process. It's something that's ongoing, and you need reinforcement that that's there. But it works through the cycle of leadership of themselves, helping others to find that leadership in themselves, looking at how they can support what's going on in their families, in their communities. And leadership of society as they start to take their role, because they're now seeing that they are a contributing factor to what's going on in their own world, but also as they step out into what other roles they can play. Now, just to give you one cycle of that, and really quickly, the young man that, the young man that you saw in the pictures, Mitchell Joseph, you've seen him here on campus, you've heard about him a lot. He was one of the first to walk into the Learning Center and had said to me, I had said to him, why don't you come on in here, and we got brand new equipment and technology and stuff like that, and you know, we could have a look at what you'd like to learn with it. And he looked at me with a big smile on his face, as you know Mitchell to have. Why would I come in there and sit in your space on a beautiful day like this when I could be out riding my bike? He's 18 at that time, beautiful spring day. And I said, I don't have a good answer for that. But when you get bored with your bike, come see me. Well, 2 weeks later, he showed up at the door, and I said, did you get bored? And he says, no, I broke my bike. But he began, at that point, the opportunity to explore his curiosity, move through the cycles. He's now, as I mentioned to you, he started out as a technician at the Learning Center. He moved into a role as management. He's managing the Learning Center. And as of last September, he became the youngest band council member for his community at age 22. So now he has gone full circle, stepping in at curiosity off of his bike at 18, and now he's actually in politics. And his portfolio, that's his word, is education, and how he can continue that cycle for the others in his community, and bringing education in for the young people. So this is what I call the architecture for sustainable community engagement. It is very much about all generations. It's Mitchell has been to Royal Roads. He hopes to come back to Royal Roads. He's brought more community members with him now when he comes. Other communities, from the opportunity of seeing things happening in their communities with the work that we do. We're starting with focusing on what needs to happen in communities so that supports the positive environment of learning, so that they start to see how they can connect to post-secondary institutions. We got lots of work to do and a long ways to go. Post-secondary immersion is one of my favorite ones that we'd love to see happen, where we actually create an environment here that people can come in and explore and test out opportunities in a non-intimidating way, what we offer here at a university. And so there's all these different types of projects that are still in the works here. Now I'm getting signals, so I'm sensing my time is either up or I'm going to be up very soon. So I'm over, so I apologize for that. So thank you very much. I really appreciate your time. Sorry if I have taken you over your time here, but if you have any questions at all, I'm happy to share those, to do my best to answer them.
Wendy, not so much a question, but a comment. This is by all accounts a successful project, successful approach, a way of doing things that has really helped to facilitate changing the way people think about their future and what they're currently doing. I think one of the things that strikes me as we go through this is, one, this has happened in settings where it's, in other places across Canada, it's been very hard to actually get that level of engagement. It's just an observation, it's nothing new, but it has happened in these communities in this way. And I guess the other thing that's really striking is that there's no shortcuts. Like it's the work it's the approach. How can you as an individual make things easier for others as opposed to you doing those things yourself? And how can you foster that engagement? And then it takes a tremendous amount of time and energy, resources from many people, from the community, from the ministry, from yourself. But just think of it, you know, going up every 2 weeks, 17 hours, you know, month after month after month. There is no shortcuts for much of this kind of work.
No, it is a investment forward, because there is no shortcuts. And in fact, the legacy of projects and working in community is typically that when the money runs out, then so does the project go away. When you go into communities, often you need to start from ground level building that relationship, and not only do you build a relationship of a new one, you have to break down the barriers of the previous projects and the previous relationship experiences. Because that's one of the very first things is that, why would I invest my time in you? You're just going to be gone. So a big part of the role that I've been working on is about, no, we're here, we're investing forward. We're in here, we agree to work together to reach points where we bring capacity and engagement opportunity to community, to the point where as our role changes. Our role changes as we step back, as community step forwards, but we're always out here. So that is a key piece, huge investment. Any other questions or comments that people would like to make?
I think the other part of the question that Mary raised is the bigger question about how do you take this particular approach and view the world and allow it to become viral, so to speak. What does it take for you, or what would it take for the institution to make this type of lessons learned something that we can build into helping others who are working in community now or wish to work in communities to recognize that there are some shortcuts that might help them get to where they want to go with those working with a lot sooner?
There's lots of, I have lots of ideas. First of all, When I had the opportunity through an invitation from Dawn and Mar to go up to a forum up in Campbell River in November, yeah, and to present, I had a window of opportunity to present about a little bit about the engagement strategies that use to get youth involved, and it was a youth workers forum. When I arrived there, I didn't know what I could do in an hour, and so I was kind of winging it, as I'm somewhat doing today. But there was, I think you said it was capped at about 55 youth workers, not the youth, but youth workers. By the end of, I had to leave, then I was only able to be there one day. By the time I left, I'm sure there was 90 youth workers from North Island and probably other parts of Victoria. And I had the opportunity to work with them a little bit in their workshops, and every one of them had an amazing story to tell, an amazing experience to share, and the same frustrations as how do we get more people how do we learn more about what we need to do, how do we get recognized for the work that we do, how can we learn more about that, how can we get more support. And so, yes, if there's not just one person out there doing it, but there are many out there looking for direction on how they can do more of it. And so we are looking at ways at how we can engage that group of people to help us shape what we might do to create a better understanding of what has to happen, a better understanding of what, or to continue to evolve this model of what has to happen. This is just one person's experience. And how can we do that more effectively? And making it mainstream. How do we drive it into mainstream engagement with not just youth, but all levels? And the very things that's in this BC Education Plan speaks to those very things. Personalized, individualized learning, using technology to inspire and to keep children engaged. But how do we interact with people that helps them to get involved at the level of curiosity and stay there? So I do know that you just can't introduce fancy-dancy technology and expect it to walk away and keep it going. You have to create the environment and somewhere to go with it and help to support them as they get there. Was that? Without saying that we would love to have a cloning machine for people that are doing the work. There is lots of support out there, but the biggest challenge is how do we find enough people to do it in the right way? Yes, Pamela.
Wendy, I just want to say, because I haven't met all you folks before, but I'm from the Ministry of Aboriginal Relations and Reconciliation. And I have so appreciated the willingness to kind of be innovative and creative and take, the instructions that you get in a funding proposal and turn them inside out and up, make them go upside down. We've worked with other communities where the colleges have sort of said, yeah, we have that program and we'll bring it in and we'll have it every Tuesday morning, and you have to be pre-assessed to get in, and we'll give you tests, and you want to do something at a level of college level, but you don't have your grade 8, but we'll work with you to get your grade, your grade 12. Like all of those things where universities and colleges have used their own practices, which create barriers that they might not even be aware of, and the doors just end up staying closed, or nobody comes in. So, you've just shown tremendous innovation and leadership and creativity in sustaining the projects that you've talked about here. But also you've helped to inform our own practice of community development in a way that has been really important, and I appreciate that exchange with the institution. I think it's helped, governments move slowly, but it's helping government to move in some of the right directions too. And when you think, I just think that it's so interesting, when you think of the educational resources we put into MBAs, engineers, biologists, we never say, oh, let's try and cut corners when we're talking about the kind of education that we've been doing forever. So the opportunity that we have now to really learn to do education in communities in a new way with great potential success. that's kind of our challenge for this next decade, I think, and I'm so appreciative of the effort that, and the learning and the teaching that you're doing to us about how we might do that best. Thank you.
Thank you, Pamela. And it's the amount of support. I really appreciate your words as well. This isn't a mutual admiration society, but it really is. Pamela was key person right from the get-go with the Okuchi Learning Center 6 years ago. She probably was a main writer of the proposal that put us into the community in the first place, helping us to support that effort. And when I came back and I said, this isn't working, and we had to sort of figure out how we could move through the system and make sure that we did all the things we needed to get the funding, and at the same time recognize all the things that we were learning that we had to do differently. There was such huge support and encouragement and direction from Pamela and from the ministry on that. And this whole process has been so amazingly well supported also by the different ministries, both Ministry of Advanced Education, Ministry of Aboriginal Relations, and a number of ministries that if you would see in the credits often that I put up here, that just were overwhelmingly willing to support something that we could all learn from. And so without that, I mean, and we had to do it every 6 months, 8 months. Research office is very familiar with my having to report out. I remember the last one from Ministry of Advanced Ed, and they said, okay, we want a final, and I sent them a paper box full of reports. I never heard from them again. They never asked for another report. But it was the process that was required to keep going. And now the funding approach has changed dramatically. Not as easy to do, but now it requires a stronger engagement with working with community to do it, which is a very appropriate thing to do. But building those relationships with community that helps to encourage those opportunities are critical. So, understood. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.